Mega Man X5 was my introduction into the X series. I was young with about $10 to my name, browsing the grocery store's game aisle and saw X5 sitting there for the same price. For some reason, I was drawn to it and decided to give it a go. And what's funny is, for the longest time, I thought I actually beat this game, but in revisiting it for Reliving Retro, I realized I didn't, so what better time to take a look at it again than now? Mega Man X5 was released for the PlayStation back in November of 2000, which is after the PlayStation 2 was made available in the States. It was originally intended to be the conclusion of the X series of Mega Man games, and the storyline is definitely written to do so. At the beginning of the game, you're given the choice of either Mega Man X or Zero, and are thrust right into the action. Well, you would be if Alia didn't talk so dang much. For some reason, Capcom decided to not only have Alia talk about almost everything, but also only allow about 6 to 8 words per text box. It's a minor gripe, but holy cow is it frustrating off the bat, and it will play for each character on a stage if you decide to explore some more later on. But anyway, the game begins with X or Zero running through a destroyed city in pursuit of Sigma, because they're always the big bad, aren't they? You meet up with your team and eventually damage from battling Sigma, and then it's your turn to finish them off. Doing so will trigger the events that sets the stage for the main game's plot. In true Mega Man fashion, you are then introduced to 4 Robot Masters, or Reploids, or Mavericks. It depends on the boss as to what they are when you face them, and whew, they'll make sure to tell you. It is a little interesting if you're into Mega Man lore, but otherwise it may just seem a little long-winded. The goal of the story is to acquire parts to beef up a massive cannon to destroy a space colony that's on a collision course with Earth. Afterwards, you're going to also try and build up a spaceship to destroy it further if the cannon wasn't successful. All of this also must be completed in 16 hours of game time, which is really about 14 mission selects and stage exits. There are 2 encounters that will take an hour away each time and can't be skipped, so that means if you want to gather all 8 parts before the collision, you must get them within 14 stage attempts. What Mega Man X5 does with the story here is kind of neat, in that it gives the player the choice to completely skip the 8 Robot Masters and just fire the cannon and launch the ship immediately. However, the success rate is incredibly low and almost guarantees that you will get the worst ending. However, with chance being involved in these decisions, even if you build both parts up as much as possible, you may still fail in destroying the colony. If you are savvy with your saves though, you can just re-roll and try again for better results. As far as the gameplay goes, it's Mega Man X. You're going to be running, jumping, shooting, exploring, charging, blasting, slashing, and ducking? For the first time in the X series, you can duck, and it's kinda cool, but it does get removed by X7 and X8. The stages have a decent amount of variety with an underwater scrolling stage and a rather unforgiving ride chaser sequence. No, seriously, if you don't pay attention the second it fades, you will die. For instance, like here.
I guess not.
However, some stage gimmicks really just exist to slow the game down and pad out time. Waiting for the lava flow may seem exciting the first time, but after a few cheap deaths, it's pretty boring. These switches are also clearly time pads and aren't nearly as satisfying as blowing up enemies. The boss fights follow the same formula as all games before. Get their weakness, use it against them, and easily win with minimal effort. But without a guide or previous knowledge of the game, learning this order could add some tension to the game as your hours dwindle if you don't have the right weapon to handle them easily. I did find that you could work through most bosses with the Mega Buster if you are patient and learn their attack pattern, which is kind of forgiving in that instance. That's the thing with this Mega Man entry. It's not exactly hard, but it provides a decent and satisfying challenge, at least until the final phase. But I'm okay with the final section being the hardest. You're supposed to use everything that you've learned and acquired in the game at that point. And by acquire, I don't just mean boss weapons. There's up to 5 different armors that Mega Man can have, and Zero can also have an ultimate upgrade. As long as you selected X at the beginning of the game, you will start with both standard and 4th armor X, otherwise selecting Zero will remove the 4th armor from use. The soundtrack is absolutely outstanding, and you won't tire of hearing any of the songs when you do decide to explore. This may be part of the reason why the game stuck with me and worked so well as my first entry. The OST is just that good. I'm glad this one's on Spotify because I'll pop it on while I'm working or driving. Also, the sounds for the weapons and the damage you're dealing fits for the game, and all the jumps and all that fit too. Visually, the game isn't exactly groundbreaking. It's using a lot of inspiration from Mega Man X4, and it works. It's fine. It's not mind-blowing. It's sprites in 2D on the PlayStation, and honestly, I'm glad they did it because at the time, 2D wasn't really a thing happening on the system. The cutscenes are pretty disappointed though, with them being static slideshows and no voiceovers or anything, just the dinging sound they chose for the text with music playing throughout. I know X4 isn't loved for its voice acting, but by 2000, acting in games was getting better than those made in the mid-90s. It's weird not having fully animated cutscenes where Mega Man 8 and X4 had them, so maybe it was a budget cut or something, but definitely a step backwards. I've said for years that Mega Man X5 is one of my favorite games to play in the series, and a great jumping off point for those who may be interested in getting into Mega Man. After really sitting down and playing it again for the first time in about 10 to 15 years, I still stand by that. The story may be kind of a take it or leave it, where it could be appreciated for the attempt at something fresh in the series with the time limit, but overall it doesn't matter in the core series as X6 was plopped out just barely 1 year later, retconning the whole thing. However, the core game is a lot of fun and it does get pretty challenging. It's not overly difficult for newcomers, and it has arguably the best soundtrack in the X series in my opinion. The visuals work well enough to keep your eyes entertained, so get out there Maverick Hunter. Commanders X and Zero need your help.